not there, and she disappears and loses her forever. So it's a sad kind of thing. So it's a sad little piece. I'm also doing this in honor of my dad, who passed in November. And he lived to a ripe old age of 94. I love my music. In fact, these CDs I'm handing out, he was handing them out like water to people, like just embarrassing. He was handing them out to everybody, giving them away. And he would play it non-stop around his house, which I don't know how he did that, because I can't even listen to my own stuff more than like once or twice a day. But he played all day long, and my stepmother seemed to love it, so that was very nice. But anyway, this is his tie, one of his ties. And so I'm going to play this piece in honor of him and anyone that you want to think of in honor of that you know that passed. So this is called Theme from Orpheus. That piece was actually, what you just heard was what's called an adaptation, if you will, of the piece. So that was really an orchestra that you kind of heard, but that was written for the piano by Sgambati in the 1850 time frame, or 1860s. So he was born between 1841 and 1914. So I never heard of Sgambati before this. So it's actually written by Gluck, G-L-U, with umlaut over C-K, but transcribed, that's the word I'm looking for piano by Sgambati, S-G-A-M-B-A-T-I. And if you look up Sgambati on YouTube, he wrote some beautiful pieces no one's ever heard of. So there's just so much treasure out there in the universe. So feel free to search on that, just some beautiful material. So the next, now he lived for 73 years. Mozart only lived for 35, and yet he's written over 600 pieces, had written over 600 pieces. And as if you've seen this movie, Amadeus, you know that he died a pauper, which is sad because he was so gifted. Now, some of his stuff, I have to admit, was kind of formulaic, you know, so after a while you kind of knew what was going to happen, but still, he was a genius in terms of the things he did. Now, this is something unique that he did that's a little different, and in fact, he called it the Turkish Waltz. And it uses some elements that were not common in the day. And in fact, in my mind, it's almost like, in the day, it must have been like rock music was to us in the 60s, because it's so different than everything else, because he was playing on basically a harpsichord, which had no damper pedal, so you couldn't hold down a note. You couldn't do that. It would just be, and that's why you had Beethoven with everything was very staccato. There was no long notes at all. And so to kind of compensate for that, he came up with this idea of a little strumming effect like this. Which is very unusual at the time. And so he called it a Turkish waltz. And there's nothing Turkish about it at all. It's just that at the time, Turkey was a very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sophisticated, you know, it was kind of like anything Turkish was amazing. So the idea was he called it a Turkish waltz, but people that know Turkish music going, that's not Turkish at all. But it really did capture the audience, and I think you'll find there's a lot of fun things he does in it. And I'll play a shorter version, I won't play the whole thing, but one of the things he also does to get some kind of, he has this thing at the top where he goes like this. So again, you have this strumming kind of effect that kind of is almost like a guitar effect, which is very unusual in the harpsichord at the time. So it's a quite fun little piece, and this again is called the Turkish waltz. There's no pedal. There's no pedal, but that was really quite a very different thing at the time, so it made a big hit. I think that's one of the things that made Mozart so popular. And as you probably know at the time, that music wasn't available to the public. That was only for nobility. Yeah. Only nobility heard this kind of music back then, you know, in the big halls or whatever. So the average serf or whatever never probably heard this at all, except if they walked by the castle or happened to be a servant or something. But that was really strictly for, so you're hearing stuff that was only for royalty at the time. It was kind of amazing. Beethoven, everyone heard of Beethoven, of course. Truly a genius. He actually lived longer than Mozart, but by our standards, not that long, 57. At the time, I think that was a good age. He wrote 772 pieces, among them the Moonlight Sonata, a very famous piece. And I want to talk about the Moonlight Sonata in a little more than just an overview, because I want to share with you a little bit about why this piece is so amazing. And why does it resonate with us? Why does it pull at our heartstrings? What is it about this piece that is so moving, no pun intended? And part of it is he's got this kind of rhythm in the beginning, which is almost like a waltz. But the other thing that's interesting is he uses a minor scale. And why are minor scales important? Well, it turns out if you have the scale of C, for those that are learning piano, it's just the white keys. A lot of songs are written in a major scale. A minor scale is you take the major scale and start on the third below it, so you start in A. It already sounds a little sad and pensive, but here's the thing about a minor scale. There's actually 3 minor scales, and one of them goes like this. It uses this cluster of notes. These notes are all allowed, quote unquote, allowed in the piece. And what makes a piece sad is to have little bits of movement, just one note at a time. Just these little movements make it kind of sad and pensive. On top of that, he plays with us a little bit, because he does, to make it kind of bittersweet so it's not all sad, he goes from a minor chord, to a major chord sometimes. So he'll do that in the middle of it. The other thing he'll do is he'll use something that I call this the homeless key, the homeless chord, because this chord, which is a diminished seventh, you really can't tell where it is musically because all the intervals are exactly the same. They're all thirds, minor thirds. And in fact, this is used in old horror movies. It's got that kind of uneasy feeling about it because it's in your mind, you can't tell where it fits musically. But what he does is he's very subtle about it. He doesn't ever play that. He spreads it out like this. So he spreads it out, so it's kind of not as obvious, but still, it leaves you with this angst, and you're not quite sure why. And so he does that as well. And then near the end, he's got this bell-like thing. At the end. He's also got this beautiful part at the end that's almost like resignation. And it's just, he resigns himself to the fact that he wrote this for one of his students. Her name was Countess Giuletti Giucchiari. And she was royalty, or, what's the word I'm looking for? Aristocratic. And the father would not let them get married. And so he wrote this to her. And so that's why it's a bittersweet piece. So I'm going to play the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata, and hopefully with those little insights you can appreciate it a little more than normal. So this is the Moonlight Sonata. 72 pieces he wrote, just amazing. Now Chopin only lived 39 years, from 1810 to 1849, and he wrote over 230 pieces, but they were just genius. In fact, excuse me, he wrote a series of etudes that were so difficult to play at first that people thought, this stuff is awful, this doesn't even sound right. And then when they heard him play it, they realized, oh my God, because he was playing it up to speed, and they said, wow, that's genius. So he wrote, and as you know, some of the composers, when they write etudes, they write one in every single key, major and minor, which is what he did. There's a lot of things there's a few things I could play for him, but I'd like to play for you today, Nocturne number 1. And nocturnes were meant to be kind of restful, at nighttime pieces. And he would often play, not so much in public, but for private events in salons, not unlike this, where people are maybe dining and getting together and chatting, and he'd play music in the background often. It's a beautiful piece called Nocturne number 1. And again, this is written in a minor key, so it's B flat minor. And it's just really beautiful. And one of the things, I just went to a master class where Roberto Poli, who's a professor at some of the major music universities there, taught me some key things about this piece. And one of the things that's interesting about Chopin is he never really played the same piece exactly the same way each time. In fact, his students said he'd often swap out different things at different places. And so when people get all upset about, oh, that's not exactly what he wrote there, in fact, he even wrote the piece differently. So when he wrote manuscripts, he wrote 3 different manuscripts, one for Paris, one for, I think it was Berlin, and one for London. And they were each a little different. So he had some fun with that, because in the German one, he would make it a little stricter. In fact, he'd say stretto a lot, which is to make it more regimented. But in fact, you know, I think he was a believer that a musical piece is not necessarily, you know, written in stone to be exactly played one way. And so even in this piece, sometimes he'll intersperse different ideas in different places. And I have some fun sometimes playing in different orders, thinking he might have done that. But for today, I'm going to play it in the order that he wrote it, at least for the London edition. So this is Nocturne number 1. performer is a contemporary of his. In fact, they were friends at times. Sometimes Liszt actually was quite a colorful man, let's just say that. He was kind of like the Elvis Presley on stage that you might think. He was quite a performer. He was so flamboyant, and the things he played were so moving that women would literally faint in the audience when they'd hear his pieces, and usually they fall asleep when I play. But he was actually a bit of a character, so he one time had a flirtation with Chopin's benefactor. He was very upset about that, so they had a parting ways for a while. But Liszt is actually quite an amazing personality. He's written the Hungarian Rhapsodies, which are incredibly difficult to play. This happens to be one of his easier pieces. It's called Consolation No. 3. It's a very sweet piece. He wrote over 700 pieces in his lifetime. He was around for 75 years, from 1811 to 1886. And in his later years, in spite of the fact that he wrote so much, he also performed a lot. And in fact, he earned a lot of money and was able to actually help a number of his contemporaries. He would fund a lot of his contemporary players. He would help them with their events. So he was actually quite the benefactor as well. And it's interesting, in his later years, he did about face and actually ended up in a monastery. So for someone that was quite a flamboyant ladies' man, in the monastery later in life to maybe pay his dues, I don't know. But anyway, this is a beautiful piece, and the reason why I love this piece so much also is, I'll play for you next a piece that I wrote that's based on a little segment of this, so I'll show you that in a minute. So this is called Consolation No. 3. I was fascinated with this one little section like this. It's actually a D flat 6, which is a wonderful little thing. I just started playing with it, and it became the beginning of a piece that I wrote called Solitude, which is also on this album. And so I just used that same thing an octave lower and wrote a whole piece, and then it had a life of its own and became a whole different piece. So I call this Solitude.
listening to your music. Well, it's good, man. I just know what to do. That's the one.
There's a lot of things in that Liszt piece that some very interesting, at the time, jazzy kind of chord progressions, which were quite fun. So anyway, so that was Solitude. This next piece is from the 1840s to 1907. Edvard Grieg wrote about 64 pieces. I'm sorry, lived 64 years, and he wrote a lot of pieces, but he wrote 66 pieces of lyric pieces.
Do something different to keep your mind off it?
A period of 19 years. The first one was
Want to watch a show?
which was based on a melody, a childhood melody they loved.
Oh, you're right.
And the very last one was named Remembrance.
Well, it actually doesn't.
Take off on
I
that
use
same
my
melody.
other phone.
But in the middle someplace, he wrote this wonderful Nocturno, Opus 54, number 4. And it's really a beautiful piece, and because he's Norwegian, you can almost hear the fjords and the birds. This like sounds at different points.
You won't know until, so I don't want to stop it now. So let it go and see. I don't hear the music anymore, but I'm hoping it's still.
I should say, you know, what's great about these little soirees
It's still in the system. I don't know.
Pianists is that half these pieces I never heard before, except that they were.
No, I think you just move it from the speaker to your earphones.
They shared it with me, and I'm going to share it with you. I hope you enjoy it.
Hopefully. We'll find out. We'll find out. I'm going to assume everything's okay.
Sorry, this room's kind of dry. Does anyone want a cough drop? I have a couple of cough drops if people want, or you're all set? Okay. It's dry, it's dry. We have water too. Does someone want water? Anyone want water? You sure? Because we have a couple of waters here. In fact, I should have one. All right, Anna, could you give her the water?
I'll give her one of these.
I meant to bring mine in from the tower. Thank you.
So this next piece is by Debussy. And you know, when I was in college, I didn't know a lot about classical music, even though I played in the high school orchestra, and I was playing in the college orchestra at the time. I was not brought up on classical music. My parents loved to listen to Pavane, which is nice, but it wasn't classical. And so I decided to go to a local record shop, and at the time, for $100, I was able to get 66 used albums, all the way from Baroque to Shostakovich. And I fell in love with the Impressionist period, Debussy, Ravel, Satie. And so I could play a lot of Debussy pieces, but today I want to play one for you called The Girl with the Flaxen Hair. And it's got a beautiful French version, which I can't, I'm not good at pronouncing French, but it's just a beautiful. However, what I did not know until recently, I read a book about Debussy called A Painter in Sound. If you come across that book, it's an amazingly well-researched book. You feel like you're almost living your life with Debussy. A lot of the pieces in there were actually based on poems of the time. And so I didn't realize there were lyrics to a lot of his music, because the lyrics don't normally follow with the music. But this particular piece, The Girl with the Flaxen Hair, has some lyrics with it. I'm going to read them to you because I think it lends a sense of beauty to it. Seated among the flowering alfalfa, who is singing in the cool morning? It is the girl with the flaxen hair, the beauty in the cherry lips. Love in the clear summer sun has sung with the lark. Your mouth has heavenly colors, you might love, and invites kisses. Would you like to converse on the flowering grass, a long last stroll with the delicate curls? Love in the clear summer sun has sung with the lark. Do not say no, cruel girl. Do not say yes. I would sooner listen to the long look of your wide open eyes and your delicate mouth, oh my love. Farewell to the deer, farewell to the hares, and the russet partridges. I want to kiss your blonde hair and press the purple of your lips. Love in the clear summer sun has sung with the lark. That's how my wife and I met, by the way. Not. But anyway, just a really pretty piece. And what's interesting about this piece is that he has, he incorporates at the time what's called, at the time it's called an Oriental influence. Now we don't say Oriental anymore, but Asian. So this pentatonic scale, that's one of them. He doesn't use that exact pentatonic scale, I think he uses this one. But the point is it gives you that kind of a Asian kind of feel to it. At the time it was very modern and lends a nice kind of flair to it. So this is called La Fille aux Chevaux de Laine. I'm not quite sure how to say it, but it's a beautiful piece by Debussy. same time frame, Scott Joplin was here on the stateside. He was born between 1868 and 1917. He wrote about 44 rags. Now, they were called rags because the expression at the time was that they'd take a piece and they'd be working on it. They'd basically be playing with it and making it syncopated and more fun to listen to. So in the same way there was, at the time they had expressions like waltz time and jig time, there was ragtime. Now the interesting thing about ragtime music is, again, it's kind of played without the damper key. And so you can play it, in these saloons where the pianos probably weren't very much in tune. So it didn't matter how much they in tune were, because it was more about the syncopation and the fun of it. So this is called Maple Leaf Rag. And I remember as a kid struggling with this until I saw on TV a 10-year-old playing it. So if he can play it, I can play it too. But it's not that easy to play because of the syncopation, but it's called Maple Leaf Rag, and this is one of my more favorite ones. It's not really a ragtime piece, but I wrote this for my son when he was born. Back, oh my God, it's about probably 39 years ago. And so his name is Andrew, so I call this Andrew's song. At the time, as a little kid, he was jumping around a lot, and it was a lot of fun. So this is kind of my memory of him. I call it Andrew's song. Okay, so I have two more pieces actually. This is by Ravel, born 10 years later, roughly, 1875 to 1935, and 37 rather. Lived for 62 years, wrote about 60 pieces. This is Pavane for the Princess, and actually, it really wasn't written for. It wasn't meant to be morbid. It was meant to be more of a. It was actually a play on words. In French, it was like infante defunte. It was more of a play of words, and it really meant. Oh, by the way, please shut off your cell phones. It really meant that kind of thinking about a princess from the past dancing. You know, it was more of a kind of a thoughtful, historic idea than a morbid one. So it's actually quite a pretty little piece. that's such a beautiful piece, but I guess he thought it was too simple at the time, so I thought it was quite funny. This next piece is by Gliere. You probably never heard of him. He's a Russian composer, but with a French lineage. His name is Reinhold Gliere. He lived for 81 years, from 1875 to 1956, so, you know, in our lifetime. This is a beautiful little piece called Nocturne in D flat, and even though it's D flat, it goes all over the place. You'll see it climbs around and lots of different accidentals, but it's, believe it or not, he calls it one of his 5 easy pieces. So I think it's kind of interesting. And again, I heard this through a friend. I heard it through someone that played it one day. I said, "Well, that's a beautiful piece. I have to learn that." So this is Reinhold Gliere. Oh, one thing that's interesting about it. At one point, he uses this wonderful open sound. This is an augmented sound. Maybe coming down. It's a beautiful effect. So it's not a major key, it's not a minor key, it's not a diminished, it's an augmented. So this is a major key. This is an augmented. And again, these are homeless too in a way because they are major thirds apart. So there's really only 4 of these in the scale. But anyway, it's a beautiful piece. So this is Nocturne in D flat. We're running out of time. If you have a little minute to amuse me, I got to play a little bit of the Rachmaninoff. This is a beautiful piece. It's written in kind of 5 beats to the beat, so it's an interesting song composition. It's Prelude 32, number 5. I won't play all of it, but just to give you an idea of it. That ends the hour, but if you'd like, I'll play one more piece for you. Is that okay? This is by Debussy again. It's from his Children's Corner, which sounds really innocent and easy, but this particular piece is crazy. It's called Dr. Gradus at Parnassum. So Parnassus was the mountain in mythology that all gods lived in, and Gradus is like the staircase to it. So the idea was, there was a book out at the time called Gradus at Parnassum, which was a very difficult book on scales and things like that. And so he kind of, in a way, makes fun of it, but maybe also is homage to it because it's quite a tricky little piece. This is called Dr. Gradus at Parnassum. this, and he played that boy played it so beautifully, except at the end, he went too fast, and he said, he messed the piece up. I said, oh my God, is that all you're thinking about, Phil? The guy played beautifully. Anyway, I want to play this one little thing for you, and I'll let you go. I took this part, just got a little murmuring sound, and I was fascinated by it, so I wrote a little tiny piece, it only goes for a minute. If you'd like it, I call it Parnassus Gardens. I'm selling this CD as a fundraiser, so if you're interested, this has 18 classical pieces on it. Some of them are so difficult to play, I can't even play them anymore. This is an effort that I did over 7 years, so what I do is when I got to the point where I could play the piece really well, I'd record it. It's got some amazingly difficult but fun pieces in here, including Waltz by Rachmaninoff, Suspiro by Liszt. Waltz by Liszt, and then by Rachmaninoff, there's one here, Polishchina, which is difficult, and also a beautiful one, where is it now? A really tricky one, Reflet on Low by Debussy. Really, really beautiful pieces. So if you're interested, my wife will handle the money. So anywhere from $5 to $20 would be appreciated. And I'm using it to raise money for our inn, the Wyndham Inn. And also, I have a book called Playing Music from Memory. So if you know anyone that wants to learn piano, a grandchild, a child, or yourself, and wants to learn how to play from memory, this is a handbook that has about 12 different chapters on techniques I use to memorize pieces. It's not just playing it a lot. There's a lot of things you can do to help you memorize faster. And I sell it online for $12, but today I'm selling it for $5.
So people have said it's good for your memory, not just for piano.
It's good for a lot of things. Some people use it for public speaking. Some of it use it for other kinds of memory tricks. So anyway, I'll sell those for $5 today. You can buy it online for $12.99, but today, because you're here,